Panthers on the Plus, our nightly check-in on Panthers-Buccaneers in the Week 18 rematch, potentially for the division. And we are doing this every night at 9 o'clock with special guests. And don't forget, we will also be in Tampa Bay starting Friday night with coverage on air on WCNC Charlotte and here on WCNC Plus. And Saturday, we've got something special cooked up for you at 4:30 or at 4 o'clock ahead of 4:30 kickoff. We will have a Panthers watch party with real-time analysis with former NFL safety Eugene Robinson, and just a fun conversation for you and with you as the Panthers take on the Bucs down in Tampa. Tonight's guest is somebody we got familiar with 2 weeks ago, and I figured we'd be doing this again just a short time later, and here we are. 10 News Tampa Bay sports director Evan Klosky joining us. Evan, what are the Bucs spirits right now? Because last night they watched the Falcons kind of muddy this whole thing up, and they no longer have a win-and-in scenario like the Panthers do. They've got to win and then get help the following day. So what did that do to their kind of vibe down there, if you will?
I'll say this. The vibe can't get any worse. Look, they've lost 7 of their last 8. You know, they didn't need Atlanta to win for them to feel better about themselves, right? They got to win. They got to win a football game, and that's even if Atlanta puts them in a tough position, they understand that they're the ones that are responsible for this. Like, it would have been nice for Atlanta to lose in a game where they were a 7-point underdog, but they've controlled their own destiny for the entire season, essentially. You know, the Panthers have also bailed them out multiple times this season to maintain their position atop the NFC South for a long time before Carolina jumped them a couple of weeks ago. And even last week, Carolina lost where they could have buried them for good. So they've had their 9 lives, and there's still a good chance that the Falcons lose on Sunday. And I can go through my whole analysis of that if we want to, but vibes are not great. Baker's banged up again. Right shoulder injury is a new one for him this season. He took a nasty hit in that Dolphins game on the fumble. So they just want to win. I think they just want a good taste in their mouth after a really bad 2 months.
Yeah, let's talk about Baker. Saw him pop up on the injury report with a knee and also shoulder, and it had been the non-throwing shoulder. Now it is the throwing shoulder. I know, today here, and I believe there was a kind of a light walkthrough. Were you able to tell anything? What are they saying about the prognosis for that heading into this game?
He's going to play. Baker's the dog. And he's played through a lot this season, and whatever this is, it's not going to stop him. Will he be effective? I don't know. But in the last game against the Panthers, up until that Ibuka 40-yard completion, I mean, the longest completion they had was about 13 yards. They already were playing pretty close to the vest in that contest and as conservative as can be. So does the injury maybe relegate them to returning to the game plan we saw a couple of weeks ago? Maybe. But we'll see Baker out there. He'll gut through it, and we'll know how bad it really is once we start watching him play. But otherwise, and you understand the portions that we see
10 minutes
at practice. 10 minutes, you're doing a couple of handoffs. They actually, during our portion, sometimes the quarterbacks do their drills during the media window. That did not happen this week. They were actually running through some stuff, so much so that they didn't want us to shoot it. So all I can say is that he's going to play, and what kind of version we get of him, not quite sure. It hasn't been a great version for 2 months anyway, and I don't know what another bump and bruise is going to do to magically change what we've kind of seen since the bye week.
Is there some solace in the fact, and like you said, we haven't really seen it from him the last 8 weeks, that it's Baker Mayfield with his back up against the wall, and as he mentioned the other day, out of lives, and sometimes that brings out the best in Baker. It hasn't up until this point, but now, like he said, he is truly out of bullets, truly out of lives. What do you know about his makeup in those moments?
He's going to be a leader. He's going to do what he's got to do. There's going to be a third down play that happens on Saturday where it's 3rd and 8 and he scrambles out of it and he makes a first down and you're all yelling at your TV like, you know it's coming. How do you let that happen, right? That's Baker. And he's gritty. He's going to figure it out. He's going to find a way on certain plays that look dead to make it happen. But can he string enough of those plays together to win a ball game, right? In flashes, he'll keep drives going. In flashes, he'll make a great play. But can he do enough? And it's not just him. It's a whole operational thing. It's an injury thing. It's an OC thing. It's we don't have to get into the weeds of it. But he's going to be a competitor and a leader. But is it enough to win the game? That's the question. Because you're going to get the fire from Baker. You're going to get the competitive spirit. But can you get that for multiple drives, multiple touchdown drives? Objectively, I don't know.
All right, let's have a Tristan Wirfs discussion briefly, but layered. Inter-office politics last week at Miami. What was going on the sideline between Wirfs and a teammate? Is it a sign of something bigger brewing there? And then just give us an update, because it sounds like he may return to action this week.
So let's start with the Tristan Wirfs, Bucky Irving thing on the sidelines. Personally, for me, I'm okay with that stuff. I don't think the team is fretting about that stuff. Do you want to be doing that on the sidelines where everyone has their cameras? No. But Todd Bowles, Baker Mayfield, everybody on this team the past couple of months has been pretty much shouting in front of the microphone saying this has to be a player-led thing and you all have to take accountability. You all have to do it. The coaches can't tell you to do everything. Like, you got to figure it out yourselves. And I'm okay with a little bit of frustration and hey, like, you guys need to do this, you guys need to do that. As long as it's not the straight up finger pointing, like, you messed that up. But like, if it's in the way of like, we got to get better sort of deal, I'm kind of okay with that, as long as there's no like fisticuffs. So I label that a nothing burger. Those on the outside looking in, especially seeing a team that's lost 7 of its last 8, I understand the optics. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat that, but I don't think it's a big deal for them. Having said that, with Tristan Wirfs, he's going to try. He was out there doing a little bit today. It was still listed as a DNP, so it was certainly nothing of significance other than like doing a couple of walkthrough steps. Yep. He would not have practiced if it was a real practice. And knowing Tristan, if he can go, he will go. But for Tristan to sit out last game, that's a red flag for me, right? That was a very important game. If Carolina wins that game, season's over. Like, there is no, hey, let's rest somebody for next week, right? Like, their season could have ended last week. You can't play that game. So for him to sit out as a captain with a toe injury, which traditionally speaking is not a good injury for NFL players. It could be a myriad of things, but usually when you're missing time for a toe, that's bad. There's definitely a chance he doesn't suit up on Saturday. But we know he's going to give it a go, and he's certainly a guy we're going to have to watch the injury report into tomorrow and then on Thursday. And he could also be a guy that doesn't even practice, the next 3 days, and just on Saturday guts through it, right? Like, he's a veteran. He understands his jobs. He's one of the handful of people on this team that could do that.
All right, we're going to have much more with 10 Tampa Bay's Evan Klosky coming up, talking Bucs Panthers. We're going to get a handle on the atmosphere to expect Saturday afternoon down there in Tampa Bay, coming up in about 120 seconds. Welcome back to Panthers on the Plus. Quick reminder, we'll be here every night at 9 o'clock talking Panthers-Bucks. We will be down in Tampa starting Friday, and on Saturday you can watch the game with us right here on WCNC Plus, beginning ahead of the kick at 4 o'clock. But want to rejoin our conversation with 10 Tampa Bay's Evan Klosky now. I'm wondering about, listen, Evan, if the Panthers somehow get into the playoffs, whether they kick into the front door or sneak into the back door this weekend, however it works out, that home playoff game is going to be something we haven't seen here in like a decade. Just that, first of all, it actually happening, and then the atmosphere. It's kind of old hat the last handful of years for Tampa getting to this point. What do you expect from the atmosphere from a fan base that's extremely frustrated with their team, even though they still have a chance to get in?
I don't expect a good one. I'll tell you that.
Wow.
That's the thing. That's a big part of this. Carolina's excited for this game, this opportunity, what could possibly be ahead. And not to say that Tampa Bay isn't. Those guys want to win. And if nothing more, for pride. They've done a lot of losing. They're sick and tired of it. And they've lost a lot of games that they should have won, to be quite honest. Just think about that Thursday night debacle against Atlanta. Even the game in Carolina, if Baker doesn't make that interception, that's a game that they feel like at least they're pushing it to overtime, and let's see what happens from there. And especially considering what happened last year, you've done that game before. But the environment is not going to be pretty. It just won't be. The area is not excited about this team. They're not excited about its coach. There's very little to get excited about when you've lost 7 of 8 and you've failed to meet such lofty expectations, not only entering the season, but after going 6-2 and having just one of the more epic collapses in franchise history. Not the number one collapse in franchise history, but it's up there as something that was certainly looked like a lock in the bye week, and you really had to try extremely hard to blow it, and you did. So that's tough. That's tough for a fan base that is used to being in the playoffs. If they do not make the playoffs, it's going to be the first time since 2019 the Buccaneers will not be in the postseason. They've won the division since 2021 every year. For them not to win the division is a big deal. And so, it's a little bit of a reminder for the fan base that you can't take the playoffs, you can't take those runs for granted. And Todd Bowles, if he loses on Saturday, is a 500 head coach during his tenure with the Buccaneers. He has a 1-3 postseason record on top of that, so it would be actually below 500. And then you kind of have little rumblings out there that, maybe Todd isn't as much on the hot seat as we all like to think. And that's not going to go well with the fan base. It really has not been going well with the fan base. So I just think all that culminates into the atmosphere. And then 4:30 Saturday doesn't lead yourself into a very exciting time slot.
All right, Evan Klosky from 10 Tampa Bay News down there covering the Bucks. Evan, from the outside, it just seemed like maybe the Bucks, this is preseason talk, like maybe the Bucks win the division again. Sure, they're the favorites, but their time seems to be coming, right? I mean, father time is coming for a lot of players on this roster. Todd Bowles was absolutely, looking at a warm seat, if not sitting on one before the season. Did Tampa do, what if they miss the playoffs, which is feasible obviously at this point, what do they point to? What do you point to in terms of how they did or did not improve the roster this offseason as kind of the warning signs?
Part of it were the injuries offensively speaking. We highly touted the fact that this was a top 5 offensive line entering the season in the National Football League. They played 0 snaps together. Tristan Wirfs missed the first few games. He didn't have a training camp because the medical staff screwed up an injury during the offseason. He was rusty even entering the year. Luke Gedeke missed 6 weeks with an injury he suffered in week 2. Ben Bredeson was off and on injured and is now currently on the IR, missing the rest of the regular season. We don't even know if he's able to return if the postseason begins. Cody Malk missed almost the entire season, got hurt week 2. And Graham Barton's been the only guy that remains, and he's a year 2 dude playing next to 2 guards who were on the practice squad on their respective teams when the season started. So that's really tough. And then factor in Chris and Mike and Emeka having to take on a huge role as a rookie and switch to every sort of receiver. Like, there were things outside of their control entering the season. And then you factor in an offensive coordinator who they took a risk on because of continuity. They wanted to try to keep that Liam Cohen magic in the system. Grizz is a good play designer, and it just reminds me a lot of the Dave Canales year when he was here. Dave Canales had a lot more magic to go with him than what Grizz has right now, but the play calling was spotty and splattery, and that's not to be, unexpected for a guy that's never called plays before, especially at the National Football League level. Both of them were in their first run, and it's just splattery, and it's leaving Baker out there to dry a little bit. So offensively speaking, I tend for it to be more of injuries and coaching than actually anything to do with the roster. I think going into next year, this is a top 5 offense if you get a really good offensive coordinator, assuming everybody's healthy again and everybody comes back. Like, they really just have to turn over a backup running back and a tight end, and they're ready to go. So I'm willing to buy that offense. The defense is where Jason Light, the general manager, probably failed them the most. The depth didn't stand out. I think some of it is coaching as well, but behind their front four of Yaya Diaby, Hassan Reddick, Vita Vea, and Kalijah Kancey, they had very little depth. And then Kalijah Kancey, who could return on Saturday, which would be a big boost for the defensive line, but Kancey got injured week 2. And then Hassan Reddick got injured, in that Lions game week 7, and their pass rush went all the way downhill. They couldn't really rush 4 anymore. They couldn't generate pressure. Their back end got exposed. Zion McCollum regressed. Jamel Dean off and on injured, probably won't play on Saturday, but he's going to try. And so the talent, the personnel, the linebackers went into the season with Levante David and Servassier Dennis. Love Levante, still productive, but not the same guy. This could be his last ever game inside Raymond James Stadium. And Servassier Dennis was a risk that I think he's more of a linebacker 3 than a 1 or 2. So I think that they need to completely overhaul the defense in the offseason. I don't know if that's feasible to do in one offseason, but you look at some of the strides Atlanta made in the offseason with that defense, what it was last year and what it is this year, and there's proof that you can do it if you do it correctly. But I don't necessarily think the Buccaneers have to rebuild or they're on the way down, but they certainly could hit a crossroads if Jason Light bungles this upcoming offseason. So if you fix the defense, you bring in a better coaching staff, I really do think that the Buccaneers could look a lot like the Jaguars, the Patriots, a lot of those other teams that you never really saw coming entering the year, and they just needed a little bit of a spark and it flipped them. So there's a lot of talent on this team. The talent's not the issue. There's a lot of other things that were exposed along the way.
All right, well, somebody's got to talk about the de facto NFC South championship game. Might as well be us. We're going to have a little bit more with 10 Tampa Bay's Evan Klosky coming up after the break.